and engaged him in agricultural field work in exchange for some food. But actually, he did not know how to work very well in the fields. He did not know where to spread dirt or where to make the ground level or uneven. His brothers used to give him broken rice, oil cakes, the chaff of rice, worm eaten grains, and burned grains that had stuck to the pot. But he gladly accepted all this as if it were nectar. He did not hold any grudges and ate all this very gladly. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The platform of Paramahansa, described in Bhagavad Gita 2.15. Samaduka Sukam Dhiram Sovrtavaya Kalpate. When one is callous to all duality, the happiness and the dread of this material world, one is fit for Amritatva, eternal life. Bharata Maharaj was determined to finish his business in this material world. And he did not at all care for the world of duality. He was complete in Krishna consciousness and was oblivious to good and evil, happiness and distress. As stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya 4, 176, Dvaita Bhadra Jnana Sabha Mano Dharma. E Bala, E Manda, Sabha Brahma. In the material world, conceptions of good and bad are all mental speculations. Yeah, everything is bad. Therefore, saying this is good and this is bad is all a mistake. One has to understand that in the material world of duality, to think that this is good or this is bad is simply a mental concoction. However, one should not imitate this consciousness. One should actually be situated on the spiritual platform of neutrality. Text number 12. At this time, being desirous of obtaining a son, a leader of dacoits, who came from the Sudra family, wanted to worship the goddess Bhadra Kali by offering her in sacrifice a dull man who is considered no better than an animal. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Low-class men, such as Sudras, worship demigods like goddess Kali or Bhadra Kali for the fulfillment of material desires. To this end, they sometimes kill a human being before the deity. They generally choose a person who is not very intelligent. In other words, an animal in the shape of a man. Text 13. The leader of the dacoits captured a man animal for sacrifice, but he escaped, and the leader ordered his followers to find him. They ran in different directions, but could not find him. Wandering here and there in the middle of the night. Covered by dense darkness, they came to a paddy field where they saw the exalted son of the Angira family, Jadavarata, who was sitting on an elevated place guarding the field against the attacks of deer and wild pigs. Text 14. The followers and servants of the dacoit chief considered Jadabarata to possess qualities quite suitable for a man animal.
Mhm.
And they decided that he was perfect choice for sacrifice. Their faces bright with happiness, they bound him with ropes and brought him to the temple of the goddess Kali. Whoa, this is real danger now. And goddess Kali's not going to like this. Purport. In some parts of India, animalistic men are still sacrificed before the goddess Kali. However, such a sacrifice is only performed by Sudras and dacoits. Their business is to plunder the wealthy, and to become successful, they offer an animalistic man before the goddess Kali. It should be noted that they never sacrifice an intelligent man before the goddess. In the body of a Brahmana, Bharata Maharaj appeared deaf and dumb, yet he was the most intelligent man in the world. Nonetheless, being completely surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he remained in that condition and did not protest being brought before the deity for slaughter. As we have learned from the previous verses, he was very strong and could have very easily avoided being bound with ropes. But he did not do anything. He simply depended uh, on the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his protection. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes surrender unto the Supreme Lord in this way. Maravi Rakhavi Yo Iche Tohara Nitya Dasa Pratikuya Adhikara. My Lord, I am now surrendered unto you. I am your eternal servant. And if you like, you can kill me, or if you like, you can protect me. In any case, I am fully surrendered unto you. So that's a very nice prayer. Very, very nice prayer. Text 15. After this, after this, all the thieves, according to their imaginative ritual for killing animalistic men, bathed Jadabharat, dressed him in new clothes, decorated him with ornaments befitting an animal, smeared his body with scented oils, and decorated him with tilak, sandalwood pulp, and garlands. They fed him sumptuously and then brought him before the goddess Kali, offering her incense, lamps, garlands, parched grain, newly grown twigs, sprouts, fruits, and flowers. In this way, they worshipped the deity before killing the man animal, and they vibrated songs and prayers and played drums and bugles. Boy, they were having a good time. Chandabhavata was then made to sit down before the deity. Purport by his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In this verse, the word sva vidina, according to their own ritualistic principles, is very significant. According to the Vedic Shastras, everything must be done according to regulative principles. But here it is stated that the thieves and rogues devise their own process for killing an animalistic man. The Tamasic Shastras give instructions for the sacrifice of an animal like a goat or buffalo before the goddess Kali. But there is no mention of killing a man, however dull he may be. This process was manufactured by the Dacoits themselves. Therefore, the word svavidina is used. Even at this time, there are many sacrifices being conducted without reference to the Vedic scriptures. For instance, in Calcutta, recently a slaughterhouse was being advertised as a temple of the goddess Kali. Oh my God. Only in India. Meat eaters foolishly purchase meat from such shops, thinking it is different from ordinary meat and taking it to be the prashada of goddess Kali. The sacrifice of a goat or a similar animal before the goddess Kali is mentioned in Shastras just to keep people from eating slaughterhouse meat and becoming responsible for the killing of animals. The conditioned soul has a natural tendency towards sex and meat eating. Consequently, the Shastras grant them some concessions. Actually, the Shastras aim at putting an end to these abominable activities, but they impart some regulative principles so that gradually meat eaters and sex hunters will be rectified. Text number 16. At this time, one of the thieves, acting as the chief priest, was ready to offer the blood of Jad Bharata, whom they imagined to be an animal man, to the goddess Kali to drink as liquor. He therefore took up a very fearsome sword, which was very sharp, and consecrating it by the mantra of Bhadrakali, raised it to kill Jadbarat. Oh, that's going to be a big mistake. Jadbarat's a pure devotee. They can't recognize it. All the rogues and thieves who had made arrangements for the worship of goddess Kali were low minded and bound to the modes of passion and ignorance. They were overpowered by the desire to become very rich. Therefore, they had the audacity to disobey the injunctions of the Vedas. So much so that they were prepared to kill Jadbharata, a self realized soul born in a Brahmana family. Due to their envy, these backwards brought him before the goddess Kali for sacrifice. Such people are always addicted to envious activity, and therefore they dared to try to kill Jada Bharata. Jada Bharata was the best friend of all living entities. He was no one's enemy, and he was always absorbed in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was born of a good Brahmana father, and killing him was forbidden, even though he might have been an enemy of aggressive, even though he might have been an enemy or an aggressive person. In any case, There was no reason to kill Jadbharata, and the goddess Kali could not bear this. She could immediately understand that these sinful dacoits were about to kill a great devotee of the Lord. Suddenly, the deity's body burst asunder, and the goddess Kali personally emerged from it in a body burning with an intense, and intolerable effulgence. Wow. I'm glad I wasn't there. Purport. According to the Vedic injunctions, only an aggressor can be killed. If a person comes with an intent to kill, one can immediately take action and kill in self defense. Okay, now this is a rule of Vedic knowledge. It is also stated that one can be killed if he comes to set fire to the home or to pollute or kidnap one's wife. Lord Ramachandra killed the entire family of Ravana because Ravana kidnapped his wife, Sita Devi. However, killing is not sanctioned in the Shastras for other purposes. The killing of animals in sacrifice to the demigods, who are expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is sanctioned for those who eat meat. This is a kind of restriction for meat eating. In other words, the slaughter of animals is also restricted by certain rules and regulations in the Vedas. Considering these points, there was no reason to kill Jadabharata, who was born in a respectable, highly exalted Brahmana family. He was a God-realized soul, a and God-realized soul, and a well-wisher to all living entities. The Vedas did not at all sanction the killing of Jadbharata by rogues and thieves. Consequently, the goddess Bhadra Kali emerged from the deity to give protection to the Lord's devotee. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura explains that due to the Brahman effulgence of such a devotee as Jadbharata, the deity was fractured. Only thieves and rogues in the modes of passion and ignorance and maddened by material opulence offered a man in sacrifice before the goddess Kali. This is not sanctioned by the Vedic instructions. Presently, there are many hundreds and thousands of slaughterhouses throughout the world that are maintained by puffed up population mad for material opulence. Such activities are never supported by the Bhagavad school. Text 18. Intolerance of the offenses committed. The infuriated goddess Kali flashed her eyes and displayed her fierce, curved teeth. Her reddish eyes glowed, and she displayed her fearsome features. She assumed a frightening body, as if she were prepared to destroy the entire creation. Leaping violently from the altar, she immediately decapitated all the rogues and thieves with the very sword with which they had intended to kill Jadabharata. She then began to drink the hot blood that flowed from the necks of the beheaded rogues and thieves, as if this blood were liquor Indeed, she drank this intoxicant with her associates, who were witches and female demons. Becoming intoxicated with this blood, they all began to sing very loudly and dance as though prepared to annihilate the entire universe. Hey, I'm glad I didn't go to that party. Oh my God. At the same time, they began to play with the heads of the rogues and thieves, tossing them about as if they were balls. Whoa. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is evident from this verse that the devotees of Goddess Kali are not at all favored by her. It is Goddess Kali's work to kill and punish the demons. Goddess Kali, or Durga, engages in decapitating many demons, dacoits, and other unwanted elements in society. Neglecting Krishna consciousness, foolish people try to satisfy the goddess by offering her many abominable things. But ultimately, when there is a little discrepancy in this worship, the goddess punishes the worshippers by taking the worshiper by taking his life. Demoniac people worship Goddess Kali to obtain some material benefit, but they are not excused of the sins performed in the name of worship. To sacrifice a man or animal before the deity is specifically forbidden, especially in the age of Kali Yuga. When an envious person commits an offense before a great personality, he is always punished in the way mentioned above. Well, what's the way mentioned above? You got to cut his head off and use it like a baseball or a basketball. Sukadeva Goswami then said to Maharaj Pariksit, "Oh, Vishnu Datta, those who already know that the soul is separate from the body, who are liberated from the invincible knot in the heart, who are always engaged in welfare activities for all living entities, and who never contemplate harming anyone, very important, are always protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who carries his disc, the Sudarshan Chakra, and acts as supreme time to kill the demons and protect his devotees." That's good news. The devotees always take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. Therefore, at all times, even if threatened by decapitation, they remain unagitated. For them, this is not at all wonderful. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. These are some of the great qualities of a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. First, a devotee is firmly convinced of his spiritual identity. He never identifies with the body. He is firmly convinced that the spirit, soul, is different from the body. Consequently, he fears nothing, even though his life may be threatened. He is not at all afraid. He does not even treat an enemy like an enemy. Such are the qualities of the devotees. Devotees are always fully dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Uh, um, are fully dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Lord is always eager to give them all protection in all circumstances. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the fifth canto, ninth chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Supreme Character of Jad Bharata. Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram
Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so now we're going to start to read chapter 10. The discussion between Jada Bharata and Maharaj Rahudana. In this chapter, Bharat Maharaj, now Jada Bharata, was successfully accepted by King Rahudana, ruler of the states known as Sindhu and Sovira. The king forced Jadabharata to carry his palanquin and chastised him because he did not carry it properly. A carrier of King Rahugana's palanquin was needed, and to fulfill this need, the chief carriers found Jadabharata as the most likely person to do the work. He was therefore forced to carry the palanquin. Jadabharata, however, did not protest this proud order, but humbly accepted the job and carried the palanquin. While carrying it, however, he was very careful. Uh, I'm sorry. Once again. While carrying it, however, he was very careful to see that he did not step on an ant. Yeah, because he's devoted. And whenever he saw one, he would stop until the ants had passed. Because of this, he could not keep pace with the other carriers. The king within the palanquin became very disturbed and chastised Jadabharata with filthy language. But Jadabharata, being completely freed from the bodily conception, did not protest. He proceeded carrying the palanquin. When he continued as before, meaning stopping when there's an ant or something, the king threatened him with punishment. Being threatened by the king, Jadabharata began to talk. He protested against the filthy language used by the king when the king chastised him. And the king, hearing the instructions of Jadabharata, was awakened to his real knowledge. When he came to his consciousness, he understood that he had offended a great, learned, and saintly person. At that time, he very humbly, respectfully prayed to Jadabharata. He now wanted to understand the deep meaning of the philosophical words used by Jadabharata. And with great sincerity, he begged his pardon. He admitted that if one offends the lotus feet of a pure devotee, he is certainly punished by the trident of Lord Shiva. Whoa. Text, Canto 5, Chapter 10, text number 2. Sukadeva Goswami continued, My dear king, after this, King Rahugana, ruler of the states known as Sindhu and Sovira, was going to Kapileswara. Kapilashram. When the king's chief palanquin carriers reached the banks of the river Iksumati, they needed another carrier. Therefore, they began searching for someone, and by chance, they came upon Jada Bharata. They considered the fact that Jada Bharata was very young and strong and had firm limbs. Like cows and asses, he was quite fit to carry loads. Thinking in this way, although the great soul Jadabharata was unfit for such work, they nonetheless, unhesitatingly, forced him to carry the palanquin. Text 2. The palanquin, however, was very erratically carried by Jadabharata due to his sense of nonviolence. Yeah, every time he saw an ant or some creature, he would avoid stepping on it. As he stepped forward, he checked before him every 3 feet to see whether he was about to step on an ant. Consequently, he could not keep pace with the other carriers. Due to this, the palanquin was shaking, and King Rahugana immediately asked the carriers, "Why are you carrying this palanquin unevenly? Better carry it properly." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Although Jadbharata was forced to carry the palanquin, he did not give up his sympathetic feelings toward the poor ants passing on the road. Oh, wow, that's a real Brahmana. A devotee of the Lord does not forget his devotional service and other favorable activities, even when he is in a most distressful condition. Jadabharata was a qualified Brahmin, highly elevated in spiritual knowledge, yet he was forced to carry the palanquin. He did not mind this, but while walking on the road, he could not forget his duty to avoid killing even an ant. A Vaishnava is never envious or unnecessarily violent. There were many ants on the path, but Jadabharata took care by looking ahead 3 feet. When the ants were no longer in his way, he would place his foot on the ground. A Vaishnava is always very kind at heart to all living entities. In his Sankhya Yoga, Lord Kapila Deva explains, Harivilas Sarvadehinam, living entities assume different bodily forms. Those who are not Vaishnavas consider only human society worthy of their sympathy. This, of course, is a mistake. But Krishna claims to be the supreme father of all life forms. Consequently, the Vaishnava takes care not to annihilate untimely or unnecessarily any life form. That includes ants and other creatures. All living entities have to fulfill a certain duration for being engaged in a particular type of material body. They have to finish the duration allotted a particular body before being promoted or evolved to another body. Yeah, so if you kill an ant, you have interrupted its natural, let's say, its natural duration. So the ant will have to take birth again all over and finish the form of an ant before it can go any further. Killing an animal or any other living being simply places an impediment in the way of his, meaning the animal's, term of imprisonment in a certain body. One should therefore not kill bodies for one's sense gratification, for this will implicate one in sinful activity. Yeah. It will hold back the animal from making further progress toward coming to the human form of life. Text 3. When the palanquin carriers heard the threatening words of Maharaja Rahugana, they became very afraid of his punishment and began to speak to him as follows. Purport. According to political science, a king sometimes tries to pacify his subordinates, sometimes chastises them, and sometimes derides them, and sometimes rewards them. In this way, the king rules his subordinates. The bearers of the palanquin could understand that the king was angry and that he would chastise them. Text 4. O Lord, please note that we are not at all negligent in discharging our duties. We have been faithfully carrying this palanquin according to your desire. But this man, who has been recently engaged to work with us, cannot walk very swiftly. Therefore, we are not able to carry the palanquin with us. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the other palanquin carriers were Sudras, whereas Jadabharata was not only a high class brahmana, but also a great devotee. Sudras do not sympathize with other living beings. But a Vaishnava cannot act like a Sudra. Whenever a Sudra and Brahmana, Vaishnava are combined, there will certainly be imbalance in the execution of duties. The Sudras were walking with the palanquin without at all caring for the ants on the ground. But Jadabharata could not act like a Sudra, and therefore difficulty arose. Text number 5. King Rahugana could understand the speeches given by the carriers, who were afraid of being punished. He could also understand that simply due to the fault of one person, the palanquin was not being carried properly. Knowing this perfectly well and hearing their appeal, he became a little angry. Although he was very advanced in political science and was very experienced, his anger arose due to his inborn nature as a king. Actually, King Rahugana's mind was covered by the mode of passion, and he therefore spoke as follows to Jadabharata, whose Brahman effulgence was not clearly visible, being covered like a fire covered by ashes. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The distinction between Rajoguna and Sattvaguna is explained in this verse. Although the king was very upright and advanced in political science and governmental management, he was nonetheless in a mode of passion, and therefore, due to a slight agitation, he became angry. Jadabharata, despite all kinds of injustice, endured because of his deaf and dumb display, remained silent by the strength of his spiritual advancement. Nonetheless, his his Brahma Teja, or spiritual power, his Brahman effulgence was indistinctly visible. Indistinctly visible in his person. Text number 6. King Rahugana told Jadabharata, "How troublesome this is, my dear brother. You certainly appear very fatigued because you have carried this palanquin alone without assistance for a long time and for a long distance. Besides that, due to your old age, you have become greatly troubled. My dear friends, I see that you are not very firm, not very strong and stout. Aren't your fellow carriers cooperating with you?" No, it's a good question. In this way, the king criticized Jadabharata with sarcastic words. Yet, despite being criticized in this way, Jadabharata had no godly conception of the situation. He knew that he was not the body, for he had attained his spiritual identity. He was neither fat, lean, or thin, nor had he anything to do with a lump of matter, meaning the body, a combination of the five gross and three subtle elements. He had nothing to do with the material body and its two hand and leg. In other words, he had completely realized his spiritual identity. Yeah, his soul, not his body. Aham Brahmasmi. He was therefore unaffected by this sarcastic criticism from the king. Without saying anything, he continued carrying the palanquin as before. Well, it's not satisfactory to the king the way he's carrying the palanquin. And every time he sees an ant, he stops or he walks around, and it's disturbing to the king. Purport: Jadbharata was completely liberated. He did not even care when the dacoits attempted to kill his body. He knew that he certainly was not the body. Even if the body were killed, he would not have cared, for he was thoroughly convinced of the proposed propo- proposition found in the Bhagavad Gita 2:20. Nahanyate hanyamane sarire. He knew that he could not be killed even if his body were killed. Yeah, because he has an eternal soul. Although he did not protest, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his agent could not tolerate the injustice of the dacoits. Therefore, he was saved by the mercy of Krishna. And the dacoits were killed. In this case, while carrying the palanquin, he also knew that he was not the body. This body was very strong and stout, in sound condition, and quite competent to carry the palanquin. Due to his being freed from the bodily conception, the sarcastic words of the king did not at all affect him. The body is created according to one's karma, and material nature supplies the ingredients for the development of a certain type of body. The soul the body covers is different from the bodily construction. Therefore, anything favorable or mischievous done to the body does not affect the spirit soul. The Vedic injunction is asango ki ayam purusha. The spirit soul is always unaffected by material arrangements. Text number 7. Thereafter, when the king saw that his palanquin was still being shaken by the carriers, he became very angry and said, "You rascal, what are you doing? Are you dead despite the life within your body? Do you not know that I am your master? You are disregarding me and are not carrying out my order." Well, that really upsets me. For this disobedience, I shall now punish you just as Yamaraja, the superintendent of death, punishes sinful people. I shall give you proper treatment so that you will come to your senses and do the correct thing. Thinking himself a king, King Rahugana was in the bodily conception and was influenced by material nature's modes of passion and ignorance. Due to madness, meaning illusion, he chastised Jadabharata with uncalled for and contradictory words. Jadabharata was a topmost devotee and the dear abode of the Supreme Personality of God. Although considering himself very learned, the king did not know about the position of an advanced devotee situated in devotional service, nor did he know his characteristics. Jadbharata was the residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He always carried the form of the Lord within his heart. He was the dear friend of all living beings, and he did not entertain any bodily conception. He therefore smiled and spoke the following words. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The distinction between a person in the bodily conception and a person beyond the bodily conception is presented in this verse. In the bodily conception, King Rahugana considered himself a king and chastised Jadbharata in so many unwanted ways. Being self-realized, Jadbharata, who was fully situated on the transcendental platform, did not at all become angry. Instead, he smiled and began to deliver his teachings to King Rahugana. A highly advanced Vaishnava devotee is a friend, to all living entities, and consequently, he is a friend to his enemies also. In fact, he does not consider anyone to be his enemy. Shrihida Sarvadehinam. Sometimes a Vaishnava becomes superficially angry at a non devotee, but this is good for the non devotee. We have several examples of this in Vedic literature. Once Narada became angry with the two sons of Kuvera, Nalakuvera and Manigriva, and he chastised them by turning them into trees. The result was that later they were liberated by Lord Sri Krishna. The devotee is situated on the absolute platform, and when he is angry or pleased, there is no difference, for in either case, he bestows his benediction. Wow. Text number 9. The great Brahmana Jadabharata said, "My dear king and hero, whatever you have spoken sarcastically is certainly true. Actually, these are not simply words of chastisement, for the body is the carrier. The Lord, carried by the body, does not belong to me, for I am the spirit soul. There is no contradiction in your statements, because I am different from the body. I am not the carrier of the palanquin. The body is the carrier. Certainly, as you have hinted, I have not labored carrying the palanquin, for I am detached from the body. You have said that I am not a stout and strong, that I am not stout and strong, and these words are befitting a person who does not know the distinction between the body and the soul. The body may be fat or thin, but no learned man would say such things of the spirit soul. As far as the spirit soul is concerned, I am neither fat nor skinny. Therefore, you are correct when you say that I am not very stout. Although, if the object of this journey and the path leading to and the path leading there were mine, there would be many troubles for me. But because they relate not to me, but to my body, there is no trouble at all. Wow. Well, it's completely free of bodily identification. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that one who is advanced in spiritual knowledge is not disturbed by the pains and pleasures of the material body. The material body is completely separate from the spirit soul, and the pains and pleasures of the body are superfluous, meaning not at all going to disturb the person. The practice of austerity and penance is meant for understanding the distinction between the body and the soul, and how the soul can be unaffected by the pleasures and pains of the body. Jadbharata was actually situated on the platform of self-realization. He was completely aloof from bodily conception. Therefore, he immediately took his position and convinced the king whatever contradictory things the king had said about his body did not actually apply to him as a spirit soul.
If we're able to do that, we'll never be offended by anybody.
Yeah. Text 10. Oh, I think we're over time.
Yeah.
All right, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions or comments? Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Haribo.
Guru Maharaj, after hearing the Jadabharat's character, it sounds like to some extent he sounds like an impersonalist, but Prabhupada also mentioned he's a pure devotee. So how do we understand this, Guru Maharaj? Like, what are the symptoms to say that he's a pure devotee? What are the symptoms that we say he's not a impersonalist?
You're talking about Jadbharata?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Why are you saying that he might be a mundane person?
An impersonal.
Impersonalist, Guru Maharaj, not mundane person. Because in his activities and his characters, so we don't see deity worship or bhajans.
Mm-hmm. Wait a minute. Let's look at this a little bit more.
And also, Guru Maharaj, he's not social, like he's himself all the time.
Well, he is demonstrating a very important principle. What is that important principle? It is stated that one who is advanced in spiritual knowledge is not disturbed by the pains and pleasures of the material body. The material body is completely separate from the spirit soul, and the pains and pleasures of the body are superfluous, meaning not significant. The practice of austerity and penance is meant for understanding the distinction between the body and the soul, and how the soul can be unaffected by the pleasures and pains of the body. Jad Bharata was actually situated on the platform of self-realization. He was completely aloof from the bodily conception. Therefore, he immediately took this position and convinced the king that whatever contradictory things the king had said about his body did not actually apply to him as a spirit soul. Well, there's a lot of lessons being taught here by Jadbharata. He's showing the difference between a person who is bodily, let's say, attached, and a person who's transcendentally engaged in service. Therefore, it says here, the practice of austerity and penance. So, austerity means you are severely engaged in activities that are not based on sense gratification. Okay, so that is austerity. And penance means you might have done some mistakes previously, and so you're accepting severe tapasya to clean your slate of making mistakes. So, the practice of austerity and penance is meant for understanding the distinction between the body and the soul, and how the soul can be unaffected by the pleasures and pains of the body. Now, that is actually a very profound statement. We cannot actually be a devotee if we are still attached to the body and the uh, pleasures and the pleasures and uh,
Pains.
pains of the body. So that's why it says the practice of austerity and penance is meant for understanding the distinction between the body and the soul, and how the soul can be unaffected by the pleasures and pains of the body. So Jad Bharata was, in other words, actually situated on the platform of self-realization. He was completely aloof from the bodily conception. Therefore, he immediately took this position and convinced the king that whatever contradictory things the king had said about his body did not actually apply to him as a spirit soul.
I think Prabhu's specific question, as I understand, is that he is definitely on the self-realized as in like spiritual platform, but where is it clear that he's actually a devotee versus, let's say, Mayavadi? Like, because there is no, I mean, this is all talking about, is that the question, Prabhu? Because he's not doing,
Yeah, not referring to Mayavadi, but more as a impersonalist or a yogi.
yeah,
So he's
like,
treated more as a yogi.
as in like, he's not doing, worship, he's not doing,
As
chanting, he's not,
social or making other devotees engage in devotional activities. So then this is going to lead that we are several folks can satisfy Lord with different activities. Even being a yogi also, that's what Jirabarta is exhibiting here, can still satisfy Krishna and be the topmost devotee.
he's not following the Sankirtan path.
Yeah, Sankirtan path or deity worship or yes, Sankirtan, Kirtan, deity worship. So
Well,
this is a because in the past I used to listen, right, and a lot of people say, all the rivers eventually lead to ocean, right, and then no path is superior. And when we hear the Jadabharata story or even Rishabhadev before prior, and we see more of a yogic, mystic, yogic activities than devotional path.
well, okay. Our takeaway for today is uh, the body may be fat or thin, but no learned man would say such things of the spirit soul. Yeah, he wouldn't say the spirit soul is fat or the spirit soul is thin. As far as the spirit soul is concerned, I am neither fat nor skinny. Therefore, you are correct when you say that I am not very stout. Also, if the object of this journey and the path leading there were mine, there would be many troubles for me. But because they relate not to me, but to my body, there is no trouble at all. So that's the point. If one identifies with the body, he can have a lot of problems. Even though he may have a lot of problems, if he doesn't identify with the body, he's not troubled at all. He tolerates and continues to practice his Krishna consciousness without becoming disturbed. That means he's a genuine devotee, not disturbed by the ups and downs of material life or the happiness and distress of the body. He knows that he's not this body. It's not that when everything is going well, he is happy, and when everything is not going well, he gets upset. No, whether he is happy or distressed, he continues to maintain the equilibrium of his mind and continues engaging in devotional service without any hiatus or without stoppage.
Maybe in this case, specifically to his question, Maharaj, like, because one, if we go back 2 lifetimes, he was doing fully devotional service. And he, in fact, withdrew from the kingly activities, and then he went into the forest, and then he was doing his regular devotional service. And then there was, because he was doing it alone, there was an attraction to did the deer, and then that led him to the downfall. So now he has, I think the main quality here, at least my understanding, Maharaj, is that is demonstrating asat sangatya, because he has gone through that experience once, that by wrongly showing compassion on the bodily platform to a deer, even though he was doing everything else right, that attachment led to fall down. So the whole story here is not about, because he was put into a situation where he doesn't have that association anymore. So he's actually demonstrating, if you are put into that situation, asat sangatyaga is, because he's probably completely meditating on the Lord, because he's on the spiritual platform that may not be talked about explicitly here, but he realizes his consciousness. My path was to go back to Godhead. So that's why he's demonstrating purely asat sangatyaga, like, he is in this world, but he's not attached to anything. He's not connected with it. So that's how I see it, because I don't think this is like a Mayavad or like an impersonalist thing. He's just so focused that he doesn't want to make any mistake of attaching to something that might bring him down.
Okay.
Right? Because the question is like, why is he not doing the devotional worship as soon as he came into this world? Because he's aloof, he's kind of not connecting with anybody, and that's, I think, because of like a person who makes the mistake of connecting with asat and then falling down. He is so worried about it that he's focused on asat sangatyaga, but within his consciousness he must be fully meditating on the Lord.
Okay.
Is that because I know these verses don't explicitly talk about what is internal state of mind, but
The main point here is that the distinction between a person in the bodily conception and a person beyond the bodily conception is presented in this verse. So, in order to recognize whether one is under the influence of the bodily conception or if one is actually free from the bodily conception of life, so that's what's being demonstrated. So King Brahogana considered himself a king and chastised Jada Bharata in so many unwanted ways. Being self-realized, Jada Bharata, who was fully situated on the transcendental platform, did not at all become angry. Instead, he smiled and began to deliver his teachings to King Rahugana, a highly advanced Vaishnava devotee is friend to all living entities, and consequently, he is a friend to his devotee. I'm sorry, to his enemies also. So see, this is what happens if somebody gets insulted and they consider the person that insulted them as an enemy, and they get angry, and it can even, go to the point where the person that is insulted wants to kill the other person. But someone like Jad Bharata, he's not disturbed by either happiness or by distress, by uh, being ignored or being respected, or by people who throw stool and urine on him, or by people who respect him. Why? Because he knows I am not this body. Therefore, he maintains the equilibrium of the mind, not being disturbed in any condition of life. That's why it says here, Jadbharata was the residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He always carried the form of the Lord within his heart. He was the dear friend of all living beings, and he did not entertain any bodily conception. He therefore smiled and spoke the following words.
That explains. He carried the form of the Lord in his heart. That is why he is a devotee.
Yeah, and he's not disturbed.
Yeah.
And also, I think in the previous chapter, ninth chapter, verse number 3, also it is mentioned that he was always thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, in the coming chapters, 11th chapter, 13, 14 verses, he directly speaks about Vasudeva in his reply to Rahugana. So, Supreme Personality Godhead Vasudeva, he mentions there.
He mentions what?
In the upcoming verses.
In the upcoming verses, he talks about Vasudeva in the 11th chapter, 13 and 14 verses.
Okay. Well, I think our takeaway today is the following. Dvaita Bhadra Bhadra Jnana Sabha Mano Dharma. E Bala E Manda Sabha Brahma. In the material world, conceptions of good and bad are all mental speculations. Therefore, saying this is good and this is bad is all a mistake. Actually, everything is bad. One has to understand that in the material world of duality, to think that this is good or this is bad is simply a mental concoction. However, one should not imitate this consciousness. One should actually be situated on the spiritual platform of neutrality. That's the key word, neutrality. He's not disturbed this way or that way. He maintains his neutrality, whether he's praised or whether he is criticized. He does not waver in his determination to be thinking always of the Supreme Personality Godhead with love and devotion. Whereas most people get upset if they're insulted, and they become vicious in their, let's say, feeling that they have been insulted, and they want to take vengeance. They want to, get back to that person that has insulted them. The main issue here is explaining what is the platform of Paramahansa. And it's described in Bhagavad Gita 2.15. Samadukha sukham dhiram, so mrtavaya kalpate. When one is callous to all duality, the happiness and distress of this material world, one is fit for amritava, eternal life. Bharata Maharaj was determined to finish his business in this material world, and he did not at all care for the world of duality, love and hate, riches and poverty, and so forth. He was complete in Krishna consciousness and was oblivious to good and evil, happiness and distress. So that's the whole point of this teaching today. Dvaita Bhadra Vajra Jnana Sabha Manodharma E Bala E Manda Sabha Brahma. In the material world, conceptions of good and bad are all mental speculation. Therefore, saying this is good and this is bad is all a mistake. One has to understand that in the material world of duality, to think that this is good or that is bad is simply a mental concoction. Why? Because everything is bad in the material world. However, one should not imitate this consciousness. One should actually be situated on a spiritual platform of neutrality, not disturbed by good or bad, steady in one's staunch desire to please the Lord and not get caught in the trap of good and bad, friend and enemy. All these things are called dualities. One is not influenced by the dualities of life. Rather, one remains steady in one's strong determination to serve the Lord with love and devotion and not get caught in the trap of happiness and distress.
Very important. So we'll
Yeah.
end the session. It's about 8 o'clock.
Okay, thank you very much, my dear devotees.
Yes.
So our takeaway from today is in the material world, conceptions of good and bad are all mental speculations.
Very important.
Therefore, saying this is good and this is bad is all a mistake. One has to understand that in the material world of duality, to think that this is good or this is bad is simply a mental concoction. However, one should not imitate this consciousness. One should actually be situated on the spiritual platform of neutrality.
Hare Krishna.
Why? Because everything is bad in the material world. Therefore, one should be neutral and just continue in doing devotional service without any hiatus.